Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sim Twins. I'm Brooke and today we are building a terrace house. But before we get into that video, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications so you know every time that we post a new video. We do post on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so get excited for that. So this is the terrace house. The terrace house is a house that is loosely inspired off of this picture over here that I found of a modern Japanese house, and so I really wanted to make it look very pretty and very modern. And this is the first part of it because I couldn't fit the actual entire build in this one video because it was taking so long to do this layout. And the reason was because there was this tiered system where the basement part of it, you can walk down to the basement when you get to the front of the house, or you can go in the front door. So I had to play a lot around with the terrain, and so I really tried to make the landscaping, everything look very nice. And then in the next video, which will come out next week, we will be showing you what we do with the inside, which I think the inside looks really nice. It's very modern and spacious, but I really liked using that photo that I got from Google because that really helped kind of build out what I wanted to do on the outside. And then the inside, when it came to the layout, was really my own design and my decision based on what we're going to be doing. So Terrace House, if you don't know, is a TV show that is a reality show based in Japan, and these 6 people come and live in a house together. And so the whole story is just them living together and like how that works. So it's kind of like the real world, but I guess for a more Japanese aesthetic style audience. You know, they're very like conservative in the ways that they do things, you know, but they're also, it's a really cute show. It's on Netflix. Definitely check it out. So this house is going to be for our new series that we're going to be starting, our new LP, which will be based on Terrace House. So we have space for 6 Sims in this house, 3 guys and 3 girl Sims. And so basically what we need you all to do is we need you all to go onto the gallery and give us some Sims to play with within our Let's Play. You can use the hashtag Terrace House Sims, and we will look through all of that and we will pick which Sims that you give us. And we have a deadline of next week, so submit those. Tweet us on Twitter at TSimTwins and all that kind of stuff, so we know that you have those you have those Sims on the gallery, and then we will decide which ones we want to use for our series. Also give them backstories, all that kind of stuff. If you add CC, make sure that you tell us where that CC comes from so that we can download all of that stuff and have it running in our game, so we can make your Sims look as accurate as possible to what you had them, what you envision them to look like. So anyway, now you can see we are playing with the downstairs portion of this house. And so the downstairs portion of this house is actually kind of set up more like a studio because, like I said, this is for our LP and the LP is based off of a reality TV show. I really made the downstairs more of a spot where people can go and film stuff for the show specifically. So really it has 2 layers to it. The Sims live in the house, and then they also like film stuff in the house, you know, as part of the series. And so I realized that this lot early on was too big because the house's like footprint was actually really small. So what I did off camera is I moved it to a smaller lot that is still in Newcrest, but instead of being a 40 by 30 lot, which is what this size was, I think it's a 40 by 20 lot. So it's just 10 tiles thinner, and that works out really well for it because in the picture that I was using, like the houses were very close together because it was a townhouse. So I really wanted the lot to feel nice and narrow and long because that's how a lot of townhouses are. And so I was really happy that I moved it to that other lot because it just doesn't feel like it's this really small house sitting in the middle of this huge lot, and it's kind of off-centered. So I liked that, and I really liked this fence. This fence looked a lot like the fence that was in the screenshot that I looked at on Google, and it was the fence that came with Perfect Patio, and I've never used it before because it's really tall. So it's kind of one for Sims who like a lot of privacy, and I was like, well, you know what, these people, their whole goal is to like be reality TV stars. They do have like their own day jobs and stuff. Like if you watch Terrace House, they all have different jobs. Some of them are actors, some of them are just regular salary people. So you know, they just come to live in this house, and it's kind of just like following their story. And one of the fun things about it is that every show they have these commentators, and these commentators kind of like talk about what was going on in the episodes, kind of like, you know, watching a play-by-play of an old watching a play-by-play, basically like they're commentating on like a sports event or something like that. So it's really fun to watch. But as you can see, I'm really trying to make the landscaping look very nice and landscaped. In Japan, like, landscaping is very important. They have a very clean aesthetic, and so I wanted to make sure that this house accurately represented that clean aesthetic. And also, because this house is modern, I did not give it a pitched roof. It just has a flat roof on it, and it has this really nice dark trim. So the house colors are like light and dark timbers together with very clean whites and all of that kind of stuff. So it's all very clean and modern, and I just really liked the way that this house turned out. And it actually becomes like technically 4 stories, because when I move on to the bedrooms have lofts in them. So I don't add that in this video, but in the next video that you'll see where we furnish it, I add in those lofts, and so it actually kind of becomes like a 4-story house, even though it really technically only has 3 stories. But I really liked these windows from Discover University, and I've never used them in the game before, but I wanted them to sit in the center of this in the center of the wall. So I had to like change the size of the room and everything, just so it would sit more center to where I wanted it to be. So I definitely had to play around a lot with the sizing of this house and everything like that, because I really wanted it to look as close to the image that I chose as possible. And now you can see I'm just like making the footprint even smaller than it was, and I'm playing around with the terrain. I really wanted the terrain to be very even on the top level and then even on the bottom level. But one of the issues with the Sims is that if you build a wall and you like have the terrain tools do not allow you to like even it out right flush against the wall. So I had to add like this little deck to kind of hide up the fact that it doesn't sit flush. And that was kind of annoying, but I mean, I just have to work within the limitations of what the Sims gives you. But really what I wanted to do during this portion of the build was to really give it that footprint that I wanted it to. I really liked that it had this nice glass door on the front, so I added that in, and I also did a lot of landscaping and stuff like that. I really thought that landscaping was really important to this, because this is a house in the city, you know, it's gonna be very pretty. It should be very modern aesthetics. I did add a trash chute onto the front of the house, because that was where they had their mailbox. But of course, I think probably City Living has mailboxes that you can put on walls because of the whole apartment thing, but I don't have that. So I just had to work with what I got. So I used the Discover University trash chute. So I realized in my second part, you'll see that I forget to put a trash can in the in the dining area. And so obviously I forget to put trash cans in kitchens a lot. I think it's a plague. Like, once you start to become a Sims builder on YouTube, you just start to forget to put trash cans in all of your builds. But anyway, so there is that trash chute on the front of the house, which is usable. So if people, you know, have things that they need to throw away, they can at least go to the front door and use that trash chute. But here I wanted to really kind of like do this modern landscaping where they had like these different tiles and everything that were laid out. And so what I did, and I had to play test these stairs to make sure the person could actually get down the stairs. But anyway, so what I did was I took that little small 2x1 piece, and I just used the little eyedropper tool to copy it and kind of make like a pathway. But later I also add in actually bath towels that are 2x1, and I layer those so it looks like you have a little walkway from the front entrance, because the way that I was doing it here, as you can see, it wasn't working because the landscape was not entirely straight, so those weren't sitting flush to the ground. You could see the foundation coming up, and I really didn't like that. So I decided to go with the bath towels instead, because they would sit flush to the ground, and you wouldn't have to worry about seeing their foundation or anything like that. And I had to play around with the stairs multiple times because I was having to play around with the actual terrain a lot in this, which is why it it took me forever and why there's going to be 2 parts of this build, because it was just so hard to try and figure out how to make everything sit straight on the ground when they come to the foundation. But I mean, I really think that I did as good of a job as I could. I also realized that this fence was sitting really close to the front of the lot, and I really wanted to add a nice little Zen garden out front like they did in the picture, so I had to move that back a little bit, which also meant that I did not have as much room to play with the front yard. But in the official build, where I've moved it to a smaller lot, I actually move it back just a tiny bit so that there is more room in the front yard and that kind of stuff. So I think that it looks a lot better on the smaller lot, honestly, because the big lot just makes it feel like there's so much unused space, and I don't like that. I like my builds to feel fleshed out and full, and I'm still working on my landscaping, so obviously, you know, I'm trying to get better at that. It's definitely a work in progress. I think that this build has definitely helped me to work on, you know, using better tools for landscaping, changing around the terrain a little bit, playing with that kind of stuff. And here I am just like using the tools in the terrain paints to make this little Zen garden out front. There is a lot of rocks and there is a lot of little plants, and I use this plant that came with Jungle Adventure, but I thought it looked really nice because it looks like it's kind of scaling up the wall. And then I also put in the sunflowers because they're really pretty. Also, if the plants look dead, it's because it's like early springtime in the game right now, so all the plants are kind of dying in Newcrest, but they'll come back to life in the summertime, of course. And I also just added that little rock paint in the front, so it would just look really nice and very nice and manicured and landscaped. And so basically now what I'm doing is I'm figuring out the layout on the inside. So it is a very open concept layout, but I like to make it as accurate to what I think about when I think about like a Japanese home. Even though it is very modern and I do like open concept layouts, it's not always that accurately representative of what an actual house in Japan would look like that is modern, because, you know, every country has a different aesthetic when it comes to what is modern, what is not modern. So I did use some walls to keep it a little bit more separated in the space, but I use a lot of things that you'll see that will make it feel more open, even though there are these walls. And so I wanted to create like a mudroom for the front of the house, and I wanted to have it so that this area was a little bit lower than the rest, because that's a traditional Japanese style house. You have the front where it's lower than the rest of the house because that's where you put the shoes and everything before you enter into the house. But because this house has a basement area, I couldn't do that. I couldn't create that split leveling the way that I wanted it to. So I just made like a really big foyer, and I added in nice little places where people could put their shoes down and people could put their jackets away and everything like that. Honestly, I would really love it if in The Sims jackets were something separate from the actual shirt, so that you could have the Sims take it off when they come inside. That would be really nice. I think a little nice detail that could be added to the game to make it feel more realistic. And then here you can see now I am playing around with this nice stone. Originally I was going with this gray, but I didn't think that it looked warm enough, so I used more of a brown tone, but it's still within that stone family that was from Fitness Stuff Pack. Honestly, Fitness has a lot of great things. And then up top I used some timber to frame out these windows so that they don't feel like they're just sitting on things that kind of clash with it, I guess. So I use a wooden thing, a wooden siding to make it look nice. Gosh, I cannot talk today. But anyway, so now I'm just adding in a little bit more details to the front area. So you have this huge landing area out front, and I really like this area a lot. It's very nice and big and open, and there isn't much patio furniture on the front of this, but I could definitely see someone adding in more patio furniture in the future. I tried to keep this house very white and bright, not only because that's like a very clean Japanese aesthetic, but also because this is the house that is going to be for our Let's Play. So I wanted the house to kind of change and be able to be changed by the people who are living in it. So all of the rooms, like all of the beds, look exactly the same. You'll see that in the next video. But I really wanted to make it so that they could come in there and they could put their own spin on their rooms, you know, add their own aesthetic into it. And this is really just like a template for the game. And then I also went through and made sure that there were lighting throughout the house, throughout the outside of the house, because a lot of times I forget to add outdoor lighting, but that's a very important part of a build. It's very important to have outdoor lighting because that really gives your build some kind of aspect that makes it feel more lifelike. And so if you really want your build to feel lifelike, adding that outdoor lighting is very important. So what I like to do is I like to toggle to the night vision, and then you can see where all of those lights are gonna hit on the hit when it comes to like what it's going to look like at nighttime. And I think that gives you a really good picture of how things are going to look. So I just added some wall lights and I added some flush lights to the ceiling because I did have that roof overhang. So I thought that was really nice. And I added a little pendant light on the front porch just so that you could have that. And then again, I had to change the sizing of everything because of the way that the windows were sitting on the wall. I wanted it to be centered, and that was really important to me, so I had to make the build a little bit smaller in places, a little bit bigger in other places. But, you know, again, this space is really big for what it is, and so I think that it is a really nice build, very modern. It's definitely one of the most complicated and intricate builds I have ever done before, just because of the way that the terrain was going and the way that the house looked and everything like that. But I mean, I was really lucky to find a nice reference picture that I saw online that I really liked. So that really helped me to better figure out the layout. I have such a hard time of just going into The Sims and building without a reference picture because it's just so hard for me to imagine what something is going to look like if I don't know what the finished product is going to be. So that's why I like to use a lot of inspiration from online pictures and that kind of stuff. And this house, I just think, is like the exact idea I had in my head for what this terrace house was going to be. And now you can see I'm putting in those little bath mats and I'm making it so that you can see the little pathway up to the front of the porch, you know. So I really liked that. I've seen a lot of Sims YouTubers do that before, and I never actually used that trick before, but I think it works out ingeniously. And I add in a little planter area as well to the front, add some stone underneath there, and then I add in a little small retaining fence, and I add in some little dirt terrain paint so that you can add, so I add in this little planter box in the front of the area. I add in a cactus, which I don't think there are that many cacti in Japan, but I thought it was fun. Cacti are very hardy plants, you know. They work in a lot of places. I also used that little round tree and I made it smaller just so it felt more like it was a bonsai tree that was in the little garden. And I added rocks, of course, and everything. I just wanted to, again, keep this clean, not overgrown. Everything is very nice and regulated in this little garden areas because, you know, that is something that is very aesthetic to Japan, like making everything look very regulated and very clean. So, you know, there's no overgrowth, there's nothing like that. It's just you have what you have and it works within the space, and then the rocks and things, everything like just fleshes it out. But I just thought that it looked really nice and really clean. And then I was also deciding what to do with these little trees that I'd added on the side here. And what I did was I put these planter boxes in, and then I put the trees inside of the planter boxes so that they could sit inside the planter boxes. And then I also added in these little small shrubs between each one. And then I still thought that it didn't look filled out enough, so I actually went through and added more of those trees in between so that it would be like really full. And yeah, so there's a lot of cypress trees right there. But I mean, I think it looks great. It definitely gives this house a lot of privacy so that, you know, in the city, like when your houses are right next door to each other, you really do want to have a lot of privacy. So I really like that. And then I used a little bit of rocks because I wanted to kind of cover up that harsh edge on that side. And so I added a little bit of a rock feature and had those rocks stacked on top of each other. and that kind of stuff. And I just thought it looked really nice in the end, what I did with the front yard. Even though it's a very small front yard, it still has a lot of nice aesthetics. And I used very modern windows in this build. I used windows from, a lot of the windows from, I'm pretty sure, Discovery University. And I know that people hate that when that door that I just plopped in there, that see-through door, but I mean, I think it worked really well for this build, because that was like the kind of door that was actually in the reference picture. So, and I also used these nice island living, like, tall windows to give in light to that bottom part, because, you know, the basement doesn't have a lot of light in it just because it's underground. So because of that front area being sunk in, I was able to get in a little more lighting than usual to a basement, because I was allowed to use that little landing area to bring in that natural light to the basement. So I actually think that the basement looks pretty nice. And so here I am playing around with the layout. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for the layout, if I was going to have them sectioned off into like rooms and stuff like that. And I decided ultimately that I didn't want to have it too sectioned off, because I wanted it to feel nice and big. And then upstairs you can see where I'm formulating, there's the 2 rooms, and then they both have their ensuite bathrooms. So in Japan, a lot of times the toilet is separate from the rest of the bathroom part, and the en-suites downstairs were too small to have that. But downstairs on the main level, I add in a bathroom, and it does have that where the toilet and the shower is separate from the sink area. So I think that was a really nice nod to Japanese culture when it comes to how they do architecture for their bathrooms and that kind of stuff. And again, here I was just covering up the fact that it was the hole and everything, where I was playing around with the terrain paint. I tried to make the deck look as natural as possible, so it felt like it blended in. But I did have to add in a step, because I realized that my sim couldn't actually step up there without a stair. So I just added in that really shallow step. And I also added a nice deck on the back. And originally I used this fencing, but a lot of the decks in Japan, I've noticed, don't actually use fences like this. They use half walls. So I go in later and change that to a half wall. But I thought it looked really nice to have this nice big deck on the back. It overlooks the backyard. The backyard area has a small pool, and it has a small eating area. And I really liked this dark timber that was used to frame the roof. I thought that was really nice. And then there's also this section of the roofing that was kind of like jutting out, and it looked like it was on an angle. So I added in these roof pieces that made it look like there were like that angled out part of the roof. And then I add in these really black industrial columns. It's a very interesting feature on the house. I am not sure like if I actually like it, but I mean, it definitely gives like more depth to the build on the top, because it is a very square house, as you can tell. It's pretty square. But I do like just like the natural tones in the woods that I used. So I use a flooring from, I think it's just like a base game flooring, but it's a really nice flooring. I was originally going to go with white, but I thought that looked too white because the walls I kept white. So I went in and used like a light natural wood tone for the floors, and I thought that looked really good with the stark white. And here you can see I'm putting up that small half wall where the staircase is going up to the second floor, and I actually use that space really good. And now we're going into the screenshots. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.